3 weeks of deafness changed my life forever, not because I lost my hearing, but because I regained it. When you're a 70-year-old woman who cannot hear, people think they can say anything without consequence. My daughter thought so too, and what I overheard when I came home from the hospital made me wish, for a fleeting moment, that I were still deaf. But it also gave me the perfect opportunity for revenge. The heart monitor's steady beep struck me like a private symphony. After 3 weeks of absolute silence, that simple electronic pulse sounded more beautiful than any music Richard and I had ever danced to. I pressed my palm against my chest, feeling my own heartbeat fall into rhythm with the machine's song. "Mrs. Grayson," Dr. Chen's voice came through crystal clear, not muffled, not distant. "Perfect. Can you hear me now?" I nodded, afraid that if I spoke, I might shatter this fragile miracle. The hearing test headphones still pressed tightly against my ears, and every tone, every whisper, every breath registered with stunning clarity. My hands trembled as I pulled them off. It's all back," I whispered, then louder, marveling at the sound of my own voice. "Everything." Dr. Chen smiled, making notes on her tablet. The stylus scratched against the screen. Another sound I had forgotten existed. "The inflammation has completely subsided. Your hearing is now testing at normal levels across all frequencies. 3 weeks ago, that supermarket accident, when the shelf collapsed right beside me, had stolen my entire world of sound. The shelf hadn't struck me, but when it collapsed, the crash beside my ear caused some kind of temporary damage. Complete deafness, they'd said. Maybe permanent. But here I was, listening to the hospital symphony, the elevator's gentle dings, footsteps echoing in the corridor, distant conversations, the whoosh of automatic doors. Jessie would be so surprised. She had been taking such good care of me, moving into the house to help while I recovered. My heart warmed at the thought of her reaction. "I need to call my daughter," I said, reaching for my phone. "Actually, let's complete the discharge process first, Doctor," Chen reminded me gently. "We want to make sure everything's properly documented." I signed the papers with trembling hands, barely reading the words. The pen scratched against the paper, a sound so ordinary, yet to me it felt miraculous. Another forgotten sound. The nurse, Patricia, explained my follow-up appointments, but I was only half listening. My mind was fixed on Jessie's face, picturing the moment I would walk through the front door and call out her name. "Take it easy for the first few days," Patricia was saying. "Your brain needs time to readjust to processing all these sounds again." I thanked them both and walked toward the elevator, my footsteps echoing softly in the hallway. Each sound felt like a gift being unwrapped just for me. The elevator doors opened with a gentle chime, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the parking garage. Even that tiny click seemed profound, like a secret blessing. My old Honda Civic waited in the same spot where Jessie had dropped me off 3 weeks ago. I had been so frightened then, facing the possibility of permanent deafness. Now, as I started the engine, I nearly laughed at the familiar rumble. The radio came on automatically, tuned to a classic rock station Richard used to love. "Everything happens for a reason," I said aloud, repeating something Richard used to tell me during hard times. My voice sounded strange in the car's enclosed space, but wonderfully clear. The 15-minute drive home passed in a blur of rediscovered sounds. Traffic hummed around me, other engines revved, brakes squeaked, horns honked in the distance. I had forgotten how noisy the world was, how alive. My neighborhood looked the same as always, neat suburban houses with their carefully maintained lawns and driveways. Mrs. Peterson was gardening next door, her rake scraping against the concrete with a steady rhythm. 2 houses down, children played in their backyard, their laughter carried by the cool March breeze. A dog barked somewhere, and another answered from across the street. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, gazing at the 2-story colonial house Richard and I had bought 30 years ago. Jessie's car was parked beside the walkway. She must be inside, probably preparing dinner or watching her afternoon shows. My hand hesitated on the door handle. Should I call out as soon as I entered, or should I surprise her? Maybe find her in the kitchen and just start talking normally, watch her face transform with joy and amazement. I decided on the surprise. Walking up the front steps, I heard voices drifting from inside. Jesse and Chris were talking in what sounded like the kitchen. Perfect. I could surprise them both. I slipped my key into the lock as quietly as possible and eased the front door open. The voices grew clearer as I stepped into the hallway. God, that old burden is back home again. Jesse's voice cut through the air from the kitchen, sharp with irritation. I froze, my hand still clutching the doorknob. The words struck me harder than any collapsing shelf ever could. Burden. Chris's voice followed, equally clear. At least the insurance money helped with her medical bills. Could have been worse. My legs suddenly felt weak. I pressed my back against the hallway wall, hardly breathing. This had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe I had misheard something. My hearing was only just returning after all. But Jesse's next words cut through any hope of misunderstanding. I just want this whole thing over with. 3 weeks of pretending to care about her every need. I'm exhausted. The world tilted around me. These were my daughter's words, my daughter's voice, speaking about me as if I were some unwanted obligation. The very daughter I had supported through college, helped through her divorce, welcomed back into my home whenever she needed shelter. I remained perfectly still in that hallway, listening to the two people I had trusted most in the world, realizing they had no idea I could hear every word they were saying. My chest felt as though someone had reached inside and twisted everything around. The hallway seemed to stretch and contract with each heartbeat as Jesse's words echoed in my mind. That old burden. 3 weeks of believing she was here out of love, believing she wanted to help her mother through the worst crisis of her life. I had been such a fool. My legs threatened to give out beneath me. But I forced myself to stay upright, pressing against the wall for support. I needed to hear more. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before making any decisions. Moving carefully along the hallway, I positioned myself closer to the kitchen doorway. Their conversation continued, and each word felt like another nail in the coffin of my trust. Sunset Manor has good reviews, Jesse was saying, and it's not too expensive. The insurance settlements should cover the initial deposit. Chris chuckled, a sound that had once seemed friendly. Once she's out of here, we can finally start renovating this place. New kitchen? Maybe knock out that wall between the dining room and living room, Chris mused. The realtor said it could add $50,000 to the value, Jesse added. Maybe more, depending on what we do with the master bathroom. They were planning my life as if I were already dead, discussing my house as though it already belonged to them. I gripped the wall so hard my knuckles went white, struggling to keep my breathing silent, but they weren't finished. Think she suspects anything? Chris asked. Are you kidding? She can't hear a thing. Poor old woman just sits there nodding and smiling while I write her notes. It's actually kind of pathetic. The contempt in her voice, my own daughter's voice, made my stomach turn. I thought about all those notes she'd written over the past 3 weeks, all those exaggerated smiles, those gentle pats on my shoulder, a performance, every bit of it. I had to test this. I had to see just how good their acting really was. Taking a deep breath, I coached myself silently. Act confused, act grateful. Watch their faces and see how well they can lie to someone they think can't catch them. I walked into the kitchen, making sure my footsteps were slightly heavier than usual, like someone uncertain of her balance. Jesse and Chris were sitting at the kitchen table, and their transformation was immediate and complete. Mom! Jessie jumped up, her face instantly flooding with what looked like genuine concern. She rushed over and took my arm gently. How are you feeling? You look tired. The same voice that had called me a burden 60 seconds ago now dripped with fake sweetness. I let myself lean into her touch, playing the part of the grateful, confused mother. Chris raised his voice unnecessarily, the way people do when they think someone can't hear properly. "Hey there, Isabella. How did the appointment go?" I only nodded and shrugged, then pointed to my ears with a questioning look. Jessie immediately grabbed a notepad from the counter. She'd gotten quite good at this routine over the past 3 weeks. She wrote, "Doctor says hearing might return soon." "That's wonderful news." I read the note, letting hope flood my expression. Inside, I studied every detail of her performance, the way her eyes widened as if joy had bloomed, the practiced squeeze of my shoulder, the forced excitement in Chris's nod. They were both playing parts in a show meant for a deaf old woman. Chris leaned closer and scribbled on the pad. "Maybe we should look into some extra care, just until you're stronger." Jessie quickly added beneath his words, "Only temporary, just help with medicine and therapy. Nothing permanent." I nodded eagerly, as if this was good news. Inwardly, I marked how smooth they were at disguising their true intent. I let my face light up, eyes shimmering with false hope, as I read Jessie's words. Inside, though, I was dissecting every gesture, her wide-eyed look of joy, the careful squeeze of my shoulder, Chris's eager nod, all rehearsed, all fake. They thought the old woman in front of them couldn't tell the difference. I smiled faintly, as though relieved by their suggestion, while inside I was choking on the poison of their lies. For the next few minutes, I played along perfectly, pretending confusion when they spoke, nodding with gratitude when Jessie wrote her little questions. "Hungry? Need anything?" Chris even patted my back, scribbling, "We're so glad you're okay." Each act of kindness felt like a dagger, but I endured. I needed more proof. I pointed weakly toward the staircase and scribbled my own note. "Tired." Going to rest, Jessie's arms wrapped around me in a hug, her voice dripping with honey. "Of course, Mom. Rest as much as you need." I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavy, their eyes burning into my back. Just before I reached the top, Chris's voice, hushed but clear, floated upward. She bought it completely. I gripped the banister tighter, steadying myself. Their game had only just begun, but so had mine. In my room, I shut the door softly and sat on the edge of the bed Richard and I had once shared. The house no longer felt safe. It felt like a trap. My daughter, the child I had carried and raised, now plotted to erase me from my own life. On the nightstand sat a framed photo, Jessie on her graduation day, her arm looped around my shoulders, both of us smiling wide. I stared at it until the smile in that picture felt like a cruel mockery. That girl was gone, if she had ever truly existed at all. But I was far from helpless. They thought I was just a frail old woman, deaf and confused, willing to accept whatever scraps of care they offered. They had no idea what they had awakened in me. On the nightstand, Richard's wedding ring still rested in its small dish. I picked it up with trembling fingers, remembering how he used to twist it whenever he was deep in thought. He would have known exactly what to do about Jessie. He always saw through people more clearly than I did. From downstairs, their voices carried on, careless and greedy, as though they had all the time in the world to plan my future. But they were wrong. I moved to the bedroom door and paused, listening. This old house had excellent acoustics. I remembered every renovation Richard and I had overseen decades ago. The heating vent near the stairs carried sound perfectly from the kitchen. If I stood in just the right spot, I could hear it all. I tested each step, recalling which floorboards creaked after so many years of living here. The third one groaned on the left side but stayed silent on the right, a detail etched in memory. I reached the perfect spot, breath held, and the voices below grew sharper. "Sunset Manor is $4,800 a month," Chris was saying. "But Medicare will cover most of it if we get the right evaluations," Jessie answered. Then her voice cut deeper. "The realtor said we could get at least $470,000 for this house. My house, the place Richard and I built our lives in, where we raised our children, where he took his last breath, reduced to a dollar figure in their mouths." "What's the timeline?" Chris asked casually. 2 months, maybe less," Jessie replied. We need to start building a pattern, document mistakes, little slips, memory lapses. Dr. Henderson owes me a favor. He can write whatever evaluation we need. My grip tightened on the banister until my knuckles turned white. They weren't just planning to discard me. They were plotting to fabricate evidence of my decline. My own daughter was preparing to destroy my name, my independence, and everything I had left. Footsteps crossed the kitchen floor, and Jessie's voice moved closer. I should check on her, make sure she's not getting suspicious. I hurried back to my bedroom, arranging myself on the bed as though I'd been dozing. Years of watching over Richard during his final illness had taught me how to slow my breathing, how to mimic the steady rhythm of sleep. Jessie's footsteps creaked softly on the stairs, avoiding the third step I knew so well. She appeared in my doorway, holding a steaming cup. "Mom," she said loudly, "I brought you some tea." I blinked slowly, as though disoriented, letting my eyes adjust to the light. She set the mug on my nightstand, right beside the dish where Richard's wedding ring rested. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, my husband's memory pushed aside by my daughter's deception. "You looked tired earlier," Jessie said, her voice slow and deliberate. "Are you feeling okay?" I nodded faintly and reached for the notepad, scrawling, "Thank you. You're so good to me." The words tasted like poison, yet Jessie's smile brightened as though she'd won some prize. She patted my shoulder, feigning affection, then whispered sweetly, "Rest as much as you need, Mom. Chris and I are taking care of everything." After she left, I stayed perfectly still, listening to her footsteps fade down the stairs. Then her voice floated back to Chris. "She's completely clueless, just like we planned." Drinking her tea like a good little patient. Chris chuckled, low and satisfied. "Perfect. Maybe we should speed things up. Why wait 2 months? Henderson can do the evaluation next week. We'll say she's been wandering, forgetting meals, leaving the stove on." My breath caught, fury rising. They weren't waiting to abandon me. They were accelerating the plan to erase me. Jessie hesitated, her voice lowering. "That could work if we document a few more incidents over the next couple of weeks." Chris agreed quickly. "Exactly. By the end of the month, we'll have her placed and be house hunting." I stared up at the ceiling, my mind racing. They weren't simply betraying me. They were plotting to strip me of my independence, my dignity, my home. Everything that gave my life meaning was being carved away in their whispers. But they had made one fatal mistake. They believed they were dealing with a helpless, deaf old woman. They never imagined I was listening to every poisonous word, collecting each one like evidence in a trial. Their scheme was becoming my case against them. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a business card I had kept for years. Robert Henley, attorney at law. He had handled Richard's estate, and more than once he'd urged me to update my own will. Tomorrow I would call him. Tonight, I would listen. If my daughter and her husband wanted to play games with an old woman's life, I was prepared to show them just how dangerous that mistake could be. I walked into my study, the room where I had managed our family finances for decades. Robert's number was printed neatly on the card, the same dark blue ink as the folder that held all my important documents. I opened the filing cabinet and began pulling out records, bank statements, tax returns, receipts, the paper trail of a life spent providing for others. Each page was a reminder: Jessie's wedding, her student loans, the down payment on her first apartment, sacrifices I had made without hesitation, all because she was my daughter. I sifted through the papers, my chest tightening with every reminder. Jessie's wedding receipts, $35,000 I had pulled from my retirement, the student loan payments, $28,000 more, the down payment for her first apartment, $15,000, another sacrifice made gladly at the time, and then Richard's medical bills, $67,000 in treatments the insurance never covered. I had carried that weight alone while Jessie kept her distance, always with an excuse ready. I pulled out a photo from Jessie's college graduation, her smile radiant, her arm wrapped around my shoulders. "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom," she had whispered then. "I'll never forget what you sacrificed." But the truth stood in the pile of bills before me, over $100,000 given freely, while gratitude had withered into entitlement. The girl in that photo had vanished, replaced by a woman willing to call me a burden and scheme for my house. Memories came rushing back like floodwaters through a broken dam. Jessie at 19, sobbing over student debt. Jessie at 25, planning her perfect wedding. Jessie at 32, absent from Richard's funeral because Chris had a promotion opportunity. And through it all, I remembered Richard's gentle warnings. "You're creating a dependency, Isabella. She needs to learn to stand on her own." I had refused to see it. I thought I was showing love, but I had only taught my daughter that taking was easier than giving, and expecting was easier than appreciating. Richard's voice echoed in my memory. "There's a difference between helping and enabling, Isabella, and a difference between gratitude and entitlement." Now, surrounded by receipts and bills, I finally understood. Jessie hadn't learned to appreciate my sacrifices. She had learned to expect them. And when I became the one in need, she saw not her mother, but an obstacle standing in the way of what she believed was rightfully hers. I stared once more at the photo, then placed it face down in the drawer. That smiling girl was gone, if she had ever truly existed. In her place stood a woman who would falsify medical records to brand her mother incompetent, who would sell the house where her father died just to fund her own dreams. But I wasn't confused. I wasn't broken. I was angry. And anger, I realized, was the only strength I needed. Tomorrow, Robert Henley would hear from me. Tonight, I would prepare. The next morning, I woke with Robert Henley's card still clutched in my hand. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, and from the kitchen below I could already hear Jessie moving about, pots clanging, her footsteps deliberate, the daily performance of the dutiful daughter. But I knew better now. Today, I would change everything. From my bedroom window, I watched Chris loading something into their car while Jessie called out that they'd be running errands. Perfect. I needed them gone. Once the house fell silent, I moved with purpose, down the stairs, careful but steady. At the stove, Jessie had left scrambled eggs warming. Her little show of care, I ignored it. I had more urgent business. Today I would reclaim control over my life. Jessie had scribbled a note before leaving. "Chris and I are going shopping this morning. Will you be okay alone for a few hours?" I wrote back, "Yes, thank you for taking such good care of me." The lie soured on my tongue, but Jessie's pleased smile told me she had swallowed it whole. She kissed my forehead before leaving, a gesture that once would have warmed me but now made my skin crawl. By 10:45, the house was mine. 15 minutes later, I reached for the phone. Old habits from my younger days returned, timing everything, double-checking each step. At exactly 11, I dialed the number on Robert Henley's card. He answered on the second ring. "Henley Law Office." "Robert, it's Isabella Grayson. I need to change my will immediately." There was a pause, then his cautious reply. "Isabella, I thought you were having serious hearing trouble." "Are you sure?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." I cut him off. My voice was steady. The decision had already been made. Robert hesitated, then said he could see me before lunch. By 11:30, I was in his office, the same old Victorian house where he had helped me with Richard's estate years ago. His secretary looked startled when I walked in unaided. "Mrs. Grayson, you look wonderful. So glad you're feeling better." Moments later, Robert appeared, his handshake firm, his eyes filled with concern. "Isabella, are you having any memory problems? Any confusion?" I met his gaze without blinking. "Robert, I want everything left to Michael. The house, the savings, all of it. Jessie will get $1,000, for reasons she will understand." Robert's eyebrows lifted, but he knew better than to argue. "This is quite a change from your current will." "Are you absolutely certain?" "Draft the papers," I replied firmly. "I'll sign them today." For the next hour, we went through the details. The house valued at nearly $500,000, the savings and investments adding up to another $300,000. By the time it was done, everything now belonged to Michael. Jesse's name was reduced to a single line, a token that would sting more than silence. By early afternoon, the new will was signed, witnessed, and filed. Robert handed me a sealed envelope containing a copy. I walked out of his office lighter than I had felt in years, not because I had taken something from Jesse, but because I had taken something back, control over my own life. Back home, I placed the sealed envelope right on the kitchen counter, exactly where Jesse would see it. Then I settled into my recliner in the living room, newspaper in hand, my ears sharpened for the sound of the front door. At 2:45, their car pulled into the driveway. Jesse's voice rang out, casual, unsuspecting. Hope she didn't try to cook anything while we were gone. Moments later, shopping bags rustled as they came inside, followed by silence, then the sharp gasp of discovery. The sound of paper tearing filled the air as Jessie ripped open the envelope. I could picture her eyes racing over the words, her breath catching when she realized what I had done. "Chris," she whispered sharply, "come here now." Footsteps pounded across the kitchen floor. "What is it?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." Her voice shook with rage as she read aloud. "To Michael Grayson, my son, I leave my entire estate, including my residence at 847 Maple Drive, all accounts, all investments, all personal property." A chair scraped harshly against the floor as Chris began pacing. When did she do this? It can't be legal. "It's dated today," Jessie snapped, her voice trembling. "Today, Chris, while we were out shopping like fools, she was downtown signing away our future." Silence pressed against the walls, thick and suffocating, until Jessie's voice cracked again. "Over 700,000? Gone. To Michael." Chris's voice grew sharp, tinged with panic. There has to be a way to fight this. Mental incompetence, undue influence, something. Jessie gave a bitter laugh. "Oh, it gets worse. Listen, to my daughter Jessie, I leave the sum of $1,000 for reasons she will understand." The kitchen went still, filled only with their ragged breathing. Then Chris repeated slowly, as if the words burned on his tongue, "For reasons she will understand." And Jessie whispered back, her tone ice cold, "It means she knows." The air in the kitchen turned electric. Chris began pacing again, his footsteps quick and restless. Maybe she's been testing us. Pretending to be deaf just to see what we'd say. Jessie's voice rose, trembling with fury. "Testing us? You think she's been listening this whole time?" "Keep your voice down," Chris hissed. "She's right in the next room." "I don't care if she hears me," Jessie exploded. "If she's been playing games, then the games are over." Their footsteps moved toward the living room. I slumped deeper into my chair, the newspaper sliding slightly in my hands, playing the part of an elderly woman dozing. "Mom," Jessie called, her tone sickeningly sweet, though her fists were clenched tight. "Are you awake?" I stirred slowly, blinking as if confused. "Oh, Jessie, did you have a nice shopping trip?" She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for cracks. "Mom, did you go anywhere today?" "While we were gone?" I tilted my head, feigning puzzlement. "Go somewhere?" "No, I stayed right here. Why would I go anywhere?" "You didn't visit anyone? Make any phone calls?" Jessie pressed. "Phone calls?" I touched my ear and gave her a sad smile. "Sweetheart, you know I can't hear well enough for that." "Not now." Her jaw tightened, but she forced her expression back into something tender. "Of course. I forgot." "I'm sorry, Mom." She turned quickly, whispering to Chris in the kitchen. I caught her words through the vent. "Either she's the best actress alive or we're missing something. Call Dr. Henderson. Tell him we need those papers tomorrow." Chris's voice dropped to a harsh whisper. "If she's playing games, we'll end them tomorrow. And if she really is confused, then the will means nothing. It'll be thrown out as the ramblings of a diseased mind. Jessie laughed bitterly, her tone like shattered glass. Either way, by Friday, she'll be declared incompetent. And then everything will be ours. Behind my newspaper, my hands trembled, but not from fear, from anticipation. They thought they were closing the trap, but I was the one holding the key. I forced my breathing to stay even, the picture of a woman dozing peacefully in her chair. Jessie's voice carried through the house phone line, high, anxious, rehearsed. Michael, thank God you answered. No, everything is not okay. Mom has completely lost her mind. She changed her will today, gave everything to you. The house, the savings, everything. She cut me out with some insulting token. I tilted the newspaper slightly, hiding the quiet smile tugging at my lips. This was exactly the confession I had been waiting for. Michael's voice was faint on the other end, but Jessie's replies told me enough. When? Today, she snapped, her voice breaking. While Chris and I were out buying groceries like caretakers, she was downtown with a lawyer, signing away my future. Then, as if on cue, her tone shifted into a pitiful wail. I've sacrificed everything to take care of her, Michael. Everything. And this is how she repays me. If I hadn't heard her true feelings with my own ears, I might have believed the performance. Jessie's voice cracked into fury. What good reasons could she possibly have? I'm her daughter. I've been here taking care of her while you sit comfortably in Seattle. You send a Christmas card once a year, and suddenly you're the expert on what Mom needs? The slam of the phone echoed through the kitchen. Her angry footsteps followed, pounding across the floor. I shifted slightly in my chair, feigning the groggy confusion of someone just waking. Jessie, was someone on the phone? I thought I heard voices. Jessie spun around, her face still flushed from anger, but she quickly rearranged her features into concern. Oh, Mom. Yes, I was just talking to Michael. I blinked at her, touching my ear with a puzzled smile. Michael? My son Michael? Is everything all right? You look upset. Her lips tightened, frustration flickering in her eyes. We need to talk about your will, about the changes you made today. I tilted my head, feigning confusion. My will? I don't understand. What changes? Her frustration simmered beneath the mask of patience. Never mind, Mom. It's complicated. Why don't you just rest? I gave her a weary nod. If you're sure everything's fine, I think I'll lie down. All this excitement has me tired. I rose slowly, moving with the careful steps of an elderly woman. But once inside my bedroom, with the door closed, I moved quickly, purposefully. I reached into the nightstand and pulled out a small cell phone Jessie didn't even know existed. My secret line to the outside world. 6. Fien Bon, Isabella Grayson, Viet Lai. I dialed Michael's number from memory. His voice came cautious on the line. Mom? Jessie said your hearing was failing. How are you calling me? Sit down, son, I told him firmly. What I'm about to say will shock you, but you must keep it between us. There was a pause, then his steady reply. Of course, Mom. What's going on? I drew in a breath. Michael, I can hear you perfectly. My hearing came back 3 days ago. I've kept it secret because of what I discovered about your sister. What do you mean? Michael asked, his voice tight. She called me that old burden, Michael. I heard her and Chris planning to put me in a nursing home so they could sell this house and buy property in Whitefish with my money. A sharp intake of breath echoed on the line. Mom, are you absolutely certain? I heard every word, I answered. They've been planning it for weeks, maybe months. They even have a doctor ready to forge evaluations to declare me incompetent. The silence on the line stretched so long I feared we'd been cut off. Michael, are you still there? I'm here, Mom, he said at last, his voice heavy. I'm just trying to process this. That call from Jessie earlier, she was trying to get me to refuse the inheritance. wasn't she? That's exactly what she was doing. She wants you to believe I've lost my mind, so you'll hand over what I left you. A pause, then his voice cracked with guilt. Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have seen this coming. I should have been there more often. You have your own family, Michael, I said softly. I understood that. But now, I need your help. They're moving faster than I expected. Jesse told Chris the evaluation is scheduled for Friday morning. If Henderson signs those papers, they'll have me declared incompetent. Michael's breathing grew sharp on the line. We can't let that happen, Mom. What do you want me to do? Not yet, I cautioned. For now, play along. When Jessie calls again, and she will, let her think you believe her lies. Give her enough rope, son. She'll hang herself with it. Michael was quiet for a moment, then sighed. You're right, Mom. I'll do it. I'll act like I believe her. That's my boy, I whispered, gripping the phone tighter. And Michael, document everything she tells you, every lie, every manipulation. We might need it later. His voice steadied. What are you planning, Mom? I looked around my room, the jewelry box Richard had given me, our wedding photo by the bed, the home Jessie wanted to sell. I'm planning to remind your sister who she's dealing with. She thinks I'm helpless. By Friday, she'll learn the truth. From downstairs, Jessie's voice carried clearly through the vent. Dr. Henderson confirmed Friday at 10. He'll do the evaluation here in the house. Chris asked. And if she refuses to cooperate? She won't have a choice, Jessie replied coldly. Henderson will say she's showing signs of dementia, confusion, forgetfulness, inability to make sound decisions. With the will change as proof, it'll be enough for a competency hearing. And Michael? I've already planted doubts in his mind. I pressed the receiver tighter to my ear, my voice firm. Michael, did you hear that? Every word, he breathed. We won't let them win. No, we can't let that happen, I said firmly. But here's my idea. When Jessie calls you tomorrow, sound worried about me. Tell her you think an evaluation might be a good idea. Let her believe she's winning. Michael hesitated. Mom, I don't like lying to family. She stopped being family the moment she plotted to steal my life, I answered coldly. She's counting on your decency to help her commit fraud. Don't give her that power. After a long silence, he agreed. All right, Mom. I'll play along until you give me the signal. They actually said it. They called me a burden, I whispered, and planned to use my house and money for themselves. But Michael, there's more. Henderson and the forged evaluations, they thought they had me cornered. Michael's voice was tight, disbelief coating every word. Mom, that's elder abuse. That's fraud. I can't believe it. Yes, I said calmly, letting the weight of my words sink in. That's why I changed the will. I had to protect myself before they could execute their plan. They planned to have me declared unfit, Michael. Forge evaluations, claim mental instability, and contest any legal decisions I made. But they underestimated me. Every word I overheard strengthened my resolve. His breathing was heavy. Mom, I feel sick. All those years you supported her, and this is how she repays you? She thought she could fool us both. But Michael, now it's our turn. Tonight, we watch and wait. Tomorrow, she'll learn what happens when she underestimates her mother. I could hear Michael processing everything over the line, his breaths sharp and uneven. Mom, they're moving faster than I thought. They'll try to act tomorrow. I know, I said calmly. But Michael, we have a plan. When Jessie calls, sound concerned about me. Let her think she's manipulating us. Give her enough rope, she'll hang herself. He was silent for a moment, then agreed. Okay, Mom. I'll follow your lead. I could hear the urgent voices downstairs, Jessie and Chris planning their final assault. I pressed the phone closer to my ear, my voice grim. Michael, document everything, every lie, every manipulation. We'll need it later. What are you planning, Mom? He asked. I glanced around my bedroom, the jewelry box Richard gave me, our wedding photo, the home Jesse wanted to sell. I'm going to remind your sister exactly who she's dealing with. She thinks I'm helpless. By tomorrow, she'll see the truth. Do you want me to lie to her? Michael asked hesitantly. Yes, I said firmly. Give her enough rope to hang herself. Every lie she tells you, every manipulation, it's all building her own trap. I moved my gaze around the room again, seeing Richard's wedding ring, the familiar furniture, the life we had built. She thinks she's dealing with a helpless old woman, but she has no idea what's coming. Through the vent, I heard Jesse continue. Doctor, Henderson confirmed Friday morning at 10. He'll conduct the evaluation right here. Chris's voice followed, anxious. What if she refuses to cooperate? She won't have a choice, Jesse said, her tone sharp. Henderson will claim she's showing signs of confusion, forgetfulness, inability to make rational decisions. And with the will change as proof, it'll be enough for a competency hearing. Michael's already questioning her sanity. I planted the seed tonight. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, voice grim. Michael, did you hear all that? Every word, he breathed. We're ready, Mom. The plan was unfolding perfectly in front of me, but I stayed calm, collected. Michael's voice betrayed doubt, but I had coached him well. Mom, are you sure about this? Yes, I said firmly. Keep playing the concerned son. Watch her spill every lie, document everything. Every word is building her case against herself. I allowed myself a quiet smile. The trap was set, and soon, Jesse would step right into it. Dad, they're planning to have you declared incompetent on Friday morning, Michael warned. No, we can't let that happen, I said firmly. But I have a plan. When Jesse calls tomorrow, act concerned. Suggest an evaluation might be a good idea. Let her think she's manipulating us. She won't see it coming. Michael hesitated, then nodded. All right, Mom. I'll follow your lead. Michael remained quiet for a moment. Then he asked, Mom, what else do you need me to do? Keep playing the concerned son and document everything Jesse says. Every lie, every manipulation, it will all serve as evidence later. And Michael, I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. She stopped being family the moment she decided to steal my independence and sell my house. Don't give her the power to hurt us further. I scanned my bedroom once more, the jewelry box Richard had given me, our wedding photo, the home Jesse had schemed to sell. I'm planning to remind your sister exactly who she's dealing with. She thinks I'm helpless. But by tomorrow, she'll learn the truth, I said, my voice steady. I had survived decades of challenges, grief, and betrayal. One greedy daughter and her selfish husband would not break me. I watched from the window as Jesse and Chris loaded shopping bags into their SUV. Jesse gestured frantically at her phone, while Chris kept checking his watch. Back by 2 p.m., Chris called toward the house, unaware that I could hear every word. Jesse's voice carried through the vent, sweet but tense. We'll be back soon. Don't forget, Doctor. Henderson comes at 10 tomorrow morning. I allowed myself a small smile. They were confident, but they didn't know I was ready. They had no idea that the victim they thought they were dealing with had been listening to every word, documenting every lie. From behind the blinds, I watched them move through the kitchen, oblivious to the trap they were walking into. Tonight, I would prepare their farewell gift. Every detail I had observed over the past weeks would serve its purpose. Jessie gestured frantically at something on her phone, while Chris checked his watch for the third time in 2 minutes. We'll be back by 2 p.m., Chris called again, unaware that I could hear him clearly. Dr. Henderson comes at 10 tomorrow, Jessie added, her tone artificially sweet. I leaned back, letting the smile creep across my face. 3 hours, more than enough time to set their farewell gift in place. I moved slowly through the house, taking inventory. Jessie had made herself comfortable in the guest bedroom she claimed as her own. Her drawers overflowed with designer clothes, silk blouses, and jewelry, all purchased with my money. Chris's belongings were piled in the second suitcase: suits, golf clubs, an expensive laptop, every item, every indulgence, all accumulated under my roof while they planned my downfall. I began with Jessie's things, folding each piece carefully, as if tracing blueprints. Her wedding dress, preserved in plastic, photo albums from college, funded by my retirement. Each item told a story of gifts freely given, yet never truly appreciated. I could almost hear Richard's voice in my mind. She takes and asks for more. When will it be enough, Isabella? I whispered aloud to the empty room. Never. It will never be enough. Chris's belongings went into the second suitcase: expensive electronics, golf accessories, a leather portfolio of business cards from jobs he'd never truly held. Everything they brought into my house, everything they accumulated under my roof, had been part of their plan to take from me. As I packed, memories of Richard's warnings echoed in my mind. She will take everything you give and ask for more. Never enough, Isabella. I carried both suitcases to the living room and placed them in the center, like silent accusations. Two piles of luxury, sitting there as monuments to betrayal. I stepped back and studied them, every detail sharpened in my mind. Every indulgence, every misuse, all glaringly obvious now. When will it be enough, Isabella? Richard's words whispered in my head. Never, I repeated, letting the truth sink in. My phone buzzed, a message from Michael. How are you holding up, Mom? Everything ready for this afternoon? I typed back simply, everything is ready. Wish me luck. His reply came quickly. You've got this. She deserves everything that's coming to her. I settled into my recliner once more, watching the two suitcases, monuments to betrayal, in the center of the living room. At 1:45 p.m., I heard the familiar sound of their car pulling into the driveway. The slam of doors. Jessie's laughter over something Chris had said. The rustle of shopping bags. I lowered the newspaper slightly, positioning myself for the performance of a lifetime. They believed they were coming home to a defeated woman. They couldn't have been more wrong. The front door swung open, and Jessie's voice cut off mid-sentence. The sound of shopping bags hitting the floor echoed like gunshots in the hallway. What the hell? Chris exclaimed, confused. Jessie, are these our suitcases? I could hear her footsteps running across the floor, panic rising. I kept my newspaper raised, savoring every second of their shock. Jessie, are these our suitcases? Chris asked again, stepping back in disbelief. Dad, what is this? Jessie's voice climbed toward hysteria. I lowered the newspaper just enough to reveal my eyes, watching their panic unfold. They think I've surrendered, I whispered to myself. They think I've given up. They couldn't be more wrong. Jessie's voice changed completely, replaced by genuine excitement. Oh my God, Chris, she's finally packed. She's leaving. Chris caught on immediately, disbelief turning to joy. I can't believe it. Finally, they were celebrating what they thought was my surrender, my defeat, my willingness to disappear quietly. Every cruel word they had spoken only confirmed their misunderstanding of me. Kriskyo jangji lai, buokshan hanva jai nang long. Tuan sao chung ta ko the bat jau sua sang. Ko le goin ha thau o whitefish. Bei tram gan. Jessie thi tham, gyong fa tron gyua fan hich va tham lam. Ho jang an mung hongi hotin la su jau hang, that bai kwa toi, hong thuk te, toi hoan tuan tin tau, hoan tuan han thuk, vasan sang han jong, moi loi honoi, moi ke hoach ho juara, chi kang kung ko kwe tam kwa toi. Every cruel word, every boast of triumph, reinforced exactly who they were. I slowly lowered the newspaper, revealing my eyes to their frozen expressions. No, sweetheart, I said in a calm, steady voice. You are leaving my house. Jessie's face went white as paper, the smile of excitement frozen mid-expression. "Mom, did you just hear me?" she whispered, horror spreading through her voice. Chris stepped backward, eyes wide with dawning realization. "Mom, how long have you been able to hear?" I stood slowly from the chair, my joints surprisingly strong. "Every word since I got home from the hospital 3 days ago." Jessie's hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes, once full of excitement, now reflected sheer horror. Every plan, every scheme they had plotted had been exposed. Every single word I had overheard over the past 3 days had been recorded in my mind. I stepped fully upright, every movement deliberate, every step measured. "You calculated every dollar, every item," I said slowly, letting the weight of my words sink in. "You planned my life like I was already gone." Jessie's face twisted in disbelief and anger, Chris's shock slowly turning to rage. They had underestimated me, and now the consequences were unfolding. "I know exactly who you are now, Chris. Both of you," I said, my voice cold and unwavering. Jessie's eyes filled with tears, but I could see the calculation behind them. "Mom, we can explain," she pleaded. "We were just worried about you. We thought you needed more care." I shook my head slowly. "You called me a burden, plotted to declare me crazy, and celebrated what you thought was my surrender. You've shown me exactly who you really are." Chris swallowed hard, his confident facade finally cracking. "Mom, we didn't realize." "You didn't realize?" I repeated, stepping closer. "You've underestimated me for weeks, whispered lies about me as if I were deaf and blind. Every plan you made, every manipulation, exposed." Jessie sobbed now, truly panicked. I didn't mean it like that." I tilted my head, my voice dripping with quiet fury. "Intentions don't matter. Actions do. And your actions speak louder than words ever could." I pointed to the 2 suitcases in the middle of the room. "Your things are packed. You'll leave this house today." Chris's face flushed red. "You can't just throw us out." I straightened my back, every inch the matriarch of this home. "This is my house. Paid for with my money, built with my sacrifices, and you dared to scheme against me under this very roof? You're already lucky I don't call the police." Jessie shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, please, don't do this. We were only trying to help you. You misunderstood everything." I let out a sharp laugh, cold and bitter. "Misunderstood?" I heard every word, every insult, every plan to lock me away. "That wasn't care, Jessie. That was greed dressed up as concern." Chris muttered under his breath, but I cut him off with a glare that froze him in place. "Mom!" Jessie sobbed, her voice cracking. "Please, we have nowhere else to go." "You should have thought about that before plotting against me," I replied, each word sharp as a blade. "I gave you everything, my money, my home, my trust. And you repaid me with betrayal." Chris stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You can't just erase us like this." I raised my chin, my voice low but commanding. "I'm not erasing you. You erased yourselves the moment you called me a burden." Jessie collapsed into a chair, her sobs echoing through the room. Chris stood frozen, glaring at me but saying nothing. I walked toward the suitcases, placing a steady hand on each. "You wanted my house, my money, my life. Instead, you'll walk out of here with nothing but what you brought in." I turned to face them fully, my voice sharp and unshakable. "This is my home. And today, I take it back." Chris finally broke the silence, his voice low and dangerous. "You'll regret this, Isabella." I met his glare without flinching. "No, Chris. The only regret here will be yours." Jessie buried her face in her hands, rocking in her chair. I stood tall, hands resting on the suitcases like a judge ready to deliver the final verdict. "Get out. Both of you. and don't ever darken my doorway again." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Chris grabbed the suitcases roughly, muttering curses under his breath. Jessie rose slowly, her eyes red and swollen, staring at me as if she no longer recognized the woman before her. At the door, I spoke one last time, my voice steady and final. "You mistook my kindness for weakness. You will never make that mistake again." The door slammed behind them, leaving only silence and my freedom. I sank slowly into my chair, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting from my shoulders. The house was silent again, but it was no longer the silence of betrayal. It was peace. On the mantel, Richard's photo seemed to watch over me, his steady gaze reminding me I had done what was necessary. I whispered to him softly, "It's over, Richard. I took our home back. I took my life back." I closed my eyes, letting the quiet wrap around me like a blanket. The echoes of Jessie's cruelty no longer haunted these walls. They had been driven out with her and Chris. What remained was mine, my dignity, my freedom, my home. And as I drifted into rest, one truth settled deep in my heart. Kindness is not weakness. They learned that too late. In the end, I learned what Richard had always tried to tell me. Love without respect becomes exploitation, and sacrifice without boundaries becomes a cage. They thought age had made me weak. They thought deafness had made me powerless. But they forgot. When a woman has nothing left to lose, she becomes unstoppable. Family is not meant to be used like currency, and those who mistake kindness for weakness will one day find that truth staring them in the face.